Everyone, good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you might be. Good evening. I am Antonis Polemitis. We are here in MOOC number 10. In other words, this is the 10th running of this MOOC, Introduction to Digital Currencies. First, let me thank you all for being here. We have a group of 3,500 people who have joined this semester from pretty much every country around the world. So thank you all for being here. This MOOC has been taught since the spring of 2014. It was the first university course ever taught on the topic of cryptocurrency. It is taught by the University of Nicosia. The University of Nicosia is the largest university in Cyprus in terms of student numbers. We have about 11,500 students from all over the world. Some of them attend courses here on our campus here in Nicosia. Some of them are online students like you are. We think we're also the largest university in Southern Europe that teaches primarily in English in terms of student numbers. And we're a comprehensive university. We have 6 schools, 18 departments, 100 degree programs. But the reason we're all here and you're all here is we were the first university in the world to teach a single course on cryptocurrency. We were the first to have a degree program on cryptocurrency, the MSc in digital currency. We were the first to accept Bitcoin for tuition. We were the first to have graduates from a program, an academic degree program in this topic area. We were the first university to publish academic certificates on the blockchain for the graduates, in fact, of this MOOC. We were the first university to publish diplomas on the blockchain. We were the first university to publish everyone's diplomas on the blockchain, all with a technological solution we developed in-house. I think by most third-party observers' viewpoint, we are the most developed, advanced university in the world in the topics of cryptocurrency and blockchain. We have a large team of both academic and administrative staff working on this topic, I think over 35 people. And we're super excited about the area of cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. We think it's going to be one of the main driving forces of technological innovation over the coming years and decades. We hope to stay at the forefront of this area. And it's something that many people at our university believe passionately in. So if this is a topic of interest to you, I think you've come to the right place. Now, let me get a little bit more specific about this course, how it's taught, how it's going to operate. This course is co-taught by Andreas Antonopoulos, who many of you know. He is regarded by many as the top expert or influencer in the cryptocurrency space. He has literally wrote the textbook, Mastering Bitcoin, Mastering Ethereum, and he is obviously a very passionate advocate for cryptocurrency in particular. And also by me, I was, at the time that this course was launched, a board member of the university, and my background is in financial services and technology in New York, in private equity and venture capital. In the last 2 years, I've been running the administrative and financial operations of the university as the chief executive officer of the university. And I think I know a few things about blockchain and cryptocurrency as well. So the course is divided into 12 sessions. Andreas will teach 6. I will teach 6. I will teach the first one, Andreas will teach the next 6, and then I will teach the last 5. The MOOC works in a flipped classroom model. So every week we will release material. Please read it. There will be a PowerPoint presentation. There will also be further reading for those who want to go into further depth. And then there will be issues for discussions and questions online in the learning management system. Please be active in those forums. Andreas Vlachos helps administer the course and is the teaching assistant for the course. And he will be actively in there with you, helping answer both substantive and technical questions relating to the course. At the end of the week, we have our live sessions like we're doing right now. And so what we use the live sessions for is not to regurgitate the material that anyone can read on their own and discuss among themselves on their own, but to answer specific questions and have a dialogue about specific questions here live. So I see we have had a good set of questions submitted already for this session. I think 15 of them. Depending on what the questions are, how long the answers take, we will sometimes get to all of them. We'll sometimes get to some of them. I'll do our best to answer them as we can, but we run these sessions for an hour. We try and answer the questions. And then the sessions are, in fact, taped and recorded. And if you missed the live session, you can always watch it afterwards. It is important to note, and I've said this every time since spring 2014, and it is still true in fall 2018. This is a very rapidly evolving space. A lot of the things that we will say, some of them we might know for sure, some of them might be speculation, some of them might be tentative answers, some of them might give you 2 or 3 different ways to think about a topic and not actually be certain what is the way it's going to play out in real life. This is one of the exciting parts about being in such an early stage area, that many things are new and many things are not known yet, and it's not known how they're going to play out. So one thing to keep in mind is, as you're with the community in the learning management system, as you're here in the live sessions, a lot of things, the answer is going to be, well, we think it's this, or we think it's something else, or they're both equally good answers, but there's not necessarily a definitive final answer for a certain topic. And what goes along with that, we as instructors and you as students and participants, I feel we're also engaging in a dialogue. And so we learn as much from our aggregate group of students as vice versa. I think a lot of our students learn from each other. And certainly nobody has an exclusive handle on knowledge and truth in this area. So for sure, please take the approach that we're all engaging in a global, around the world conversation on a super interesting topic with both technical and societal implications. I want to further emphasize the topic of community. The community is everyone, in our opinion, that has taken the MOOC or been part of the degree program or come to our conferences. I think that's bordering on 30,000 people. I think it's one of the greatest sets of communities in this whole space. When I go to conferences in this space, there are many, many, many people who have somehow gone through either the MOOC or our course or both. And so the University of Nicosia alumni in cryptocurrency and blockchain is a very, very big group. And so please feel free to consider yourself part of the broader University of Nicosia family, having joined now this course. We do a variety of things in this area. So there's this MOOC. We also teach the masters in digital currency, and I'll come back to that in a second. We have a master's in computer science with a concentration in blockchain technology. We have a variety of professional training courses. We run a big conference every year called Decentralized. And briefly, this year it's in Athens from November 14th to 16th. And if you are going through this course, there's a discount on your conference tickets. And the conference is amazing and awesome. And we have a super set of speakers. And it's the one time a year all of us get to see each other in person. And so if you are free those days in November, I would highly encourage you to come to Athens. It's a beautiful and amazing city, and you're going to have a great concentration of people who love this topic getting together. So do mark your calendar for that and contact either Andreas or Irini if you think that's something you might be interested in. And we're working on this concept also of decentralized chapters, where people who are engaged in this community can get together in a fixed meeting spot all around the world and continue the type of dialogue we're having here online. So the way we view this is that this is something that beyond the specifics of this course, once you're part of this team and family and community, we're delighted that you're here, and we are passionate about the topic, and we hope to stay in touch with you and you all with each other over the next years. Now, the Masters in Digital Currency I had mentioned earlier, it's the first degree program in the world on this topic. It is the largest. I think we have close to 500 students now in this program from all around the world, from a variety of backgrounds. Some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are doctors, lawyers, some of them are regulators, some of them are retirees, some of them are career changers, some of them are bankers, some of them are insurance industry folks. It is every spectrum you can imagine. And they have been an amazing bunch of graduates and alums and gone off to do very many interesting things. And it is for someone who wants to work in the space either as a executive on the more business administrative management side, or as someone who wants a more technical orientation on the more development side. It's a great program. We run it online. We run it in English, just like the MOOC. We're starting a new intake now. The next intake will be in January. This course, if you complete it successfully, will count as your first course towards the MSc. And I think it's the biggest and best established of its type in the world. And so if it's something that is of interest to you, by all means talk to Irini if you're not already talking to her. And if through the semester you'd like to learn more, talk to Andreas Vlachos, and he can put you in touch with the right people. Lastly, for me personally, the best way to get in touch with me on a fast basis is probably actually Twitter. I am at Polemitis on Twitter. I also accept LinkedIn requests, though I'm not that active on LinkedIn. The slowest way to get a hold of me is to leave me a message in the learning management system. I'm not very good at checking that. So I would definitely recommend, instead of leaving me a message there, that you leave Andreas Vlachos a message there. And he will either answer your question directly, or if it's something that requires me, will find me and get your question answered through me. But by all means, if I can help with any specific topic beyond this course, If I can steer in the right direction, I will try. I can't promise that I'll be able to. I can't promise that I'll be able to give a productive answer. I definitely am not good at reviewing ICO pitches and business plans and telling you if they're a good idea or not. I don't do that as a matter of principle. But on more simple requests, I try and be helpful. And if it is something important and I haven't gotten back to you, please find Andreas and he will find me. He works in the same building as me. And so he has the advantage that he can just walk into my office and physically get a hold of me, which sometimes is needed. So by all means, feel free to reach out or chat or engage in dialogue. I love that, and hopefully I'll be able to respond. So I think that's the key background topics I felt I should cover at the beginning of the course. Andrea, if there's anything you think I've missed, chat it to me and I'll cover it. And look, we have about 40 minutes now that we've done the intro stuff on this one, so I want to switch over to try and answer some of these questions and see how far we get. First question I'll take on. Why was the supply of Bitcoin capped? If Bitcoin has many hard forks, do you think that it means we will have unlimited supply of currencies, then inflation and so on? Let's split this question into two. The first part of the question is, why was the supply capped? And my answer to that is, I don't believe you can bootstrap a independent, private, non-national currency and have an uncapped supply. Think about, let's say you're starting from scratch and you wanted some type of independent digital currency. And part of what needs to happen for it to bootstrap is people have to be willing to hold it, so it develops some type of market value versus other currencies, so that there are liquid markets for people to trade in and out of it. If you went and told people this is Polemitis coin or Irini coin, and there are going to be an infinity number of these coins, I think it would be very difficult to convince anyone that they should hold any. And if nobody holds any and there's zero demand for holding some of them, it's hard, I think, for it to get off the ground. And so I think this is an important point that people miss, because sometimes you hear, well, I love the technological aspects. I love that you can use the Bitcoin blockchain to timestamp a document, for example. And that is actually a great thing. But I'm not quite so sure I like the speculation of people trying to buy and hold and gain value and lose value. I think you can't totally separate those two things in practice, because for the Bitcoin blockchain to work, you need mining security. For a lot of money to be invested in miners, Bitcoins need to be worth something. For Bitcoins need to be worth something, people need to want to hold them. For people to need to want to hold them, they need to believe they will hold value or gain value or might have some type of positive returns, or at least will have up or down changes in value so that they can make money by trading them. And so I think once you've assumed the question of it's a private currency, I think the design means it has to be capped. It doesn't mean, by the way, that if it's capped, it's going to be successful. I think it's more that if it's not capped, it's probably difficult for it to be successful. Now, so then people will say, well, what about the hard forks? And there have been a huge number of hard forks, right? Both directly, specifically of Bitcoin itself, but also other cryptocurrencies. I think there's well over 1,000 now. Do those cause inflation? Is there, in effect, unlimited supply? Well, there is unlimited supply of cryptocurrencies. I think that is effectively true. And I think tomorrow I could go launch Polemitis coin and clone the Bitcoin blockchain or even hard fork it or start fresh and say there's going to be not 21 million, there's going to be 19 million. Look, it's even fewer. Is it going to be more valuable? I doubt it, because just like many other things in life, and particularly in the technology world, there are network effects. And particularly for a currency or a pseudocurrency or a commodity that people are using like a currency, network effects are important. So the fact that a quarter of the planet already knows what Bitcoin is, the fact that 10 or 15% of the planet can access an exchange to convert national currency to Bitcoin and vice versa, the fact that certain people will accept Bitcoin as a means of exchange, the fact that there already is a highly secure blockchain underlying Bitcoin that you can use for things like timestamping or, in our case, validating diplomas or what have you. Those things are not easy to replicate, even if you just hard fork Bitcoin. And so there is some aspect of a first mover advantage, some aspect of a network effect that I think does exist here. Okay, next question. Is the medium of exchange and the unit of account usually the same in a national economy? And I'm taking this one because this is like an easy one. The answer is yes. It usually is. There have been some outlying examples over the years where you've had dual currencies playing this role. But I think for practical purposes, at a national level, 99% of the time, that's the case. Now, when do things change? Well, sometimes there was a case in South America that was actually officially planned. There was one medium of exchange and a unit of account. It's a very edge case. It's happened once. You do see this breakdown in hyperinflation, right? They say like, oh, well, we're going to price everything in dollars, but you're going to pay in bolivars. And there the kind of unit of account becomes dollars and the medium of exchange becomes bolivars, right? Like that type of thing happens. It happens when people dollarize, like Zimbabwe officially dollarized a few years ago. So there are edge cases where that breaks down. But the normal way things work, almost all countries, almost all years, their medium of exchange and their unit of account is the same because it's simpler, right? Like, something costs €5 here in Cyprus and you want to buy it and you take out €5 to buy it. It's kind of how intuitively you feel money should work. And so anything beyond that tends to be a special circumstance type of case, and usually a sign of something going a little peculiar, to be honest. Okay, next question, and again on the topic of 21 million, but so I want to answer this close to the other one. Would it be possible, if it is sufficiently backed by the community, to make exchange in the protocol to change the supply of 21 million Bitcoin? How would this be done? And if so, is there a chance this will happen somewhere in the future? Sure, I think in practice what would happen is there'd be a big argument between the people who wanted to change and the people who didn't want to change, what they get to call it, right? Because I don't see any likely mechanism where every single person who currently is running a Bitcoin node and a Bitcoin miner would unanimously agree to change the number of Bitcoins. That's pretty close to the closest thing to an absolute that everyone in the community believes in. Now, it's not everyone. It's maybe like 80%, but 90%, but it's pretty close. It's kind of close to the Holy Grail. So what is Bitcoin? What is the Bitcoin network? Well, it's just what a bunch of people who are running the same software agree that they're doing, right? So I believe what would happen if there was ever a strong push to change this, there would be an argument that, well, that's a hard fork off from the existing network and it should be called something else. And since there's no they're there except the community, right? Like if the three of us are the only three people on the planet and we're running XYZ software and we agree we're running Bitcoin software and this is Bitcoin software, then we're running it. I mean, it's just whatever we all mutually agree we're doing. It's why arguments about naming tend to be so vicious in this world, right? Like the whole Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash discussion versus Bcash has been a very controversial topic, because about the only thing that unites any of these things is the name. Otherwise, it's just whatever set of people are running a certain set of protocols, that's the network. And so I don't think it is likely that there'll be a major push to change the 21 coin limit. And the idea that it would happen where everyone agrees to change is, I consider, impossible. And so what will happen is maybe in the future there'll be yet another fork off Bitcoin that does something else, says for some reason it's going to have more coins or a different monetary policy. And then the relative value or popularity is going to be determined by the market, just like with the other forks from Bitcoin. The USD slight inflation targets 2 to 3% a year may discourage hoarding of money, stimulate economic activity, and maintaining full employment. How could you imagine an inelastic supply curve currency such as Bitcoin would do in comparison? Yeah, so this is interesting. This is where I possibly have slightly different views than a lot of other people who really like Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's amazing. It's a great invention. But among the set of people who think that, I probably have a slightly different, more conventional view of macroeconomics than a more Keynesian view of macroeconomics versus a more hard money Austrian view. And so what does this mean? And in all cases, we're talking about the middle ground. Everyone, I think, agrees that high inflation or highly variable inflation is bad. I think some people agree or disagree about deflation. But let's discuss what the conventional view is among central bankers today for national currencies. The conventional view is that it's easier to manage a slight amount of inflation than it is to manage a slight amount of deflation, because a slight amount of deflation can get out of hand more easily than a slight amount of inflation. And let's discuss what this means. Let's talk about a deflationary loop. Let's say you thought to yourself, wow, I know for sure that everything will be cheaper tomorrow. That's good news as a consumer, right? Like, everything's going to be cheaper tomorrow. So if you can avoid it, you're not going to spend money today. You will wait and spend it tomorrow. But of course, you're not the only one who has this great idea. Everyone has this great idea. So nobody spends money today. Problem is, now the economy also has a bunch of sellers, right? Like people's salaries also come from companies, or do come from companies that are selling things. And today, nobody bought anything. So tomorrow, everyone gets a little bit panicky because they didn't sell anything. And so what do people do when there's less demand for their product? One of the things they might do is drop the price. Well, if they drop the price, they're increasing the deflation. They're increasing and supporting the expectation that prices will go down. So now everyone says, wow, look at this, price is really dropping. Let's wait until tomorrow, they're going to be even lower. So again, nobody buys anything. And the next day, the same thing happens. Well, now the companies are starting to get worried, like no one's buying anything, let's lay some people off. Well, now you're laid off, you don't have an income, or you're even less likely to buy something. So there's less demand. And then you spiral into a deflationary spiral that's hard to actually break out of, because everyone's incentive is not to spend today. Whereas if there is a slight push to consumption, which is kind of what this mild inflation is meant to do, it's viewed as kind of important for total output and for societal stability to try and maintain full employment. I know the counter argument, and this isn't the macroeconomics section of the course, so I'm not going to cover it in detail, but I do believe this view I've just described is the conventional view. And I believe that on a national level, for a national currency, I believe the conventional view is generally sensible. My view on how this relates to Bitcoin is that it doesn't relate at all, because Bitcoin isn't meant to be, my opinion, again, not everyone in the space agrees with me, a national currency. I think it would be very, very difficult to manage a global or a national economy using Bitcoin. First of all, as you can see now, it is very volatile. It would be a horrible unit of account for the economy, right? And some will say, yeah, sure, but when it matures and it stabilizes, then it's going to be some type of supranational currency. I don't know. We'll see if that ever happens. But let's say it does happen. I'm also not sure it's a wonderful idea to have one currency for the whole planet, because different parts of the world might need more stimulative policies or more restrictive policies from a monetary basis at any point in time, depending on how the economy is doing there. And so it's not necessarily accurate, in my opinion, to say that, Italy and Japan and Singapore and Kansas all need to be following at all times the exact same monetary policy. So I think Bitcoin as a national tool for monetary policy is not particularly well suited for that purpose. I think it is closer to commodity money and closer in that function to, say, gold. And in modern central banking, for better or for worse, we don't tend to use gold as the metric of how to manage the economy. And again, I note that in this space in particular, this is for some people a controversial point of view. Question here, what's the difference between fiat money and banknotes? So fiat money, it's a term used heavily in this space, a little less heavily outside of the cryptocurrency space. What they mean is money that is not backed with a commodity, right? Like there has been money that has been backed with a commodity, that you can go trade a dollar for this much gold. You can trade a dollar for this much silver. You can trade a dollar for this much gold and silver. Today, you cannot trade a dollar for neither gold nor silver nor anything else. You can go trade a dollar at the US Treasury for a dollar. So it is not an asset-backed money. It's what people generally mean. And so then it started off, I think, as a pejorative. It's starting to lose its pejorative nature, I think, now, given how often it's used in the cryptocurrency space. And so the fiat is an order, right? So it's like, oh, this is money by decree. You're all going to use dollars by decree, not because it's backed by some valuable asset. I don't think that's exactly the right way to look at it, by the way, but it's what people mean. Now, banknotes, people generally mean the physical representation of a pound or a euro in a bank note. You interact a lot with that as a consumer, but banknotes and coins are a fairly small part of the money supply in an advanced developed economy. Most fiat currency is also digital. It exists as digital balances at your bank or at the central bank or investment banks or currency traders and so on. So mostly it's not in physical coinage or physical notes. Cryptocurrencies are usually valued according to their US dollar value. Will this ever change? Are cryptocurrencies subject to shocks due to fiat, e.g., if the US dollar went into hyperinflation? I think it is fair to say that cryptocurrencies, like everything else, are going to be valued at any point in time in whatever the unit of account for your country is at that point in time. So it could be dollars because it's the largest and biggest market in the world. But if you're in Europe, you might see it occasionally in euros or British pounds in the UK. But that's realistically how people are going to value it, so that there's a common reference point. Of course, if a fiat currency goes into hyperinflation, it will impact the relationship. So Bitcoin in Venezuelan bolivars has gone up a lot this year, even though Bitcoin in dollars has gone down a lot this year. So all currencies are in some form of competition with each other at all time. And that applies both to kind of commodity money type currencies like Bitcoin and national fiat type currencies like dollars or euros or yen or Turkish lira or Venezuelan bolivars. Given the power of the U.S. Federal Reserve over the U.S. political system, isn't it incorrect to talk about Fed constraints, but rather to talk about Fed choices? And it's linked to another question, but I think they're independent questions. So let me answer that first. It is true that the U.S. Federal Reserve is very powerful. It is true that the decisions of the U.S. Federal Reserve have significant impacts on the U.S. economy and on the U.S. political system, and therefore it is a power center and an entity in its own right. However, it is constrained a little bit by its own policies and history and approach, and let's call it norms in a way, that for decades now, it has been following a similar-ish policy in terms of objectives, noting that there is often a lot of disagreement among the Fed governors about what is the best way to meet those objectives in any current macroeconomic environment. So there hasn't been a time in recent history where the Fed said, I'd really love to run inflation up to 10%. That's never said that, right? The Federal Reserve has never said, it'd be really fantastic if we could cause a deflationary spiral in the United States. So I don't think the Fed has effective choices to go out into those types of decisions. So I think it's constrained to trying achieving its policy objectives. Now, what you actually do to do that is difficult. For many, many years, there has been concern that the Fed has been running too loose a monetary policy, and a big surge of inflation was right around the corner. And that big surge, there were a lot of hawks that were like, oh my God, there's just all this easy money, inflation's about to take off. But it never happened. And there were good arguments on both sides. So I think it is possible to say I have objective X as the Fed, but then read the economic data and disagree, I think, in good faith about what the economic data is telling you about how you can reach that objective. So that is, I think, one aspect. I think the other aspect is it's considered good practice in modern central banking for your central bank to be insulated to some degree from the political system of democracy. And then people say, oh my God, the Fed's unaccountable and out of touch. But I believe it is a bit of a feature, not a bug, where the concern is if interest rates are solely in the hands of elected politicians, there is a great temptation to run too loose a monetary policy. Because in the early stages, having a loose monetary policy generates economic growth. Economic growth tends to be popular with voters. If it's popular with voters and voters are happy and everyone's getting jobs and then politicians tend to get reelected. And so politicians like getting reelected. And then that's great. And then it tends to overshoot. And then you have inflation. And then, okay, but the politicians accomplished their objective. They've gotten elected. And now there's a problem you kind of need to wheel back somehow. Right? Like there's the Alan Greenspan view of the Federal Reserve is that their job was to take the punch bowl away from the party just as the party's about to get interesting, right? Like that's a very central banker point of view. Sure, we'll all have some drinks, everyone will get sociable and start chatting, but before anyone starts dancing on a chair or blacks out or has a hangover tomorrow, we're going to go take the punch bowl away. And the theory is that people who are somehow insulated from an election cycle are more likely to have the courage to take the punch bowl away than the person who is elected to host the party from the party participants. And so it might, in a way, be a slightly condescending view of the voter, but probably not totally inaccurate. And currency markets tend not to react favorably to politicization of central banks. So take Turkey, where the bank used to be fairly independent, and now it's a little less independent, and that's hasn't been received well in the currency markets because people are concerned that decisions will be a little bit more populist than would otherwise be ideal. So I think that's one question. The second question is, how is Bitcoin truly decentralized? Well, decentralization is a spectrum, right? There's no clear definition of what exactly decentralized means, right? So you can look at how many nodes there are, how many miners there are, how concentrated the mining pools are, and how many countries the mining pools are. And so there's a lot of factors you can take into account. But the first thing that I would say that I think is absolutely true, and this is not true for a lot of organizations, let's say, and it's certainly not true of any private digital currency. Go ask yourself who the CEO of Bitcoin is. Go find the management team. Go ask yourself who you can sue if you're unhappy with Bitcoin. And really, there's nobody, right? There's no there. There's people who run the software. There's people who contribute to the software. There's people who mine the software. But none of them can claim that they're in charge. There's nobody who is definitively in charge. And I think that's a pretty interesting feature. I think it is helpful to Bitcoin's resiliency. If it was a normal corporation and they issued some Bitcoins and then some government said, yeah, I'm not really thrilled that you're doing this. I'm not really thrilled that you're doing this, and please stop, and I'm going to sue you or put you in jail or do something like that. People can exert pressure on a private currency done that way. It's harder, not impossible, but harder to exert pressure on Bitcoin. You'd have to go against many individuals simultaneously. in many jurisdictions. I mean, you could do it in an emergency situation, but it wouldn't be that easy, and it would still, I think, just drive it underground as opposed to eliminate it altogether. And so the way to think about it in a very simplistic manner, kind of the base level functionality of Bitcoin, you can hold a token and you can send it to other people. It's kind of like a bank account without any bank being there. Right? Like in aggregate, the users of Bitcoin and the miners of Bitcoin are running something like a bank without there being a bank in the middle. And you have balances, right? And you have addresses, and you can move the balances from one account to another. And you have the bookkeepers, and the bookkeepers are the miners. And it's this weird currency called Bitcoin. You can't put US dollars into it, you can put Bitcoins into it. But if you accept that concept, it's effectively a bank. Now, there's no customer service you can call if you lose your private key. You can't go to the branch of Bitcoin. People can build around it, but the core network is effectively, it is a bank without there being a bank. And that's interesting. That's a different form of human organization that we haven't seen before. And so nothing's 100% decentralized, but I do think Bitcoin is quite decentralized, and I think arguably more decentralized than anything of a similar nature to Bitcoin than we've seen before. Okay. Do you think another reason people have trouble understanding Bitcoin is they lack basic fundamentals and background knowledge of banking, currency, and commerce? I think the starting point of why people don't understand Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is not so easy to understand, A. I believe, B, people also generally don't understand how banks work or how central banks work or how many aspects of the financial system work. And people would be, I think, hard-pressed to explain to you what the relationship is between their house and their mortgage and the person who issued the mortgage and the central bank of the country and the securitization that happened to their mortgage and. I mean, it's not as if the average person is fully up to date on all the very, very many complicated aspects of the financial system, and it's just in Bitcoin they don't understand. Right? The average person has some kind of vague understanding of how finance and banking and accounting works. That's kind of good enough to get through the day on a transactional basis. Everyone knows enough about money to be able to go buy their groceries, but not much more than that at an average person level. So I think it's not rocket science, but I think you do need to spend some time and effort. I think you need to learn some basic concepts about finance and money and banking in general, and then you have to wrap your head around some kind of interesting and non-trivial technology and how that technology works. And it's non-trivial because, and one reason we know it's non-trivial, no one thought about how to do it this way until 2009. Now, people had bits and pieces of the solution in earlier technological platforms, but no one actually had all the pieces together until 2009. So part of the reason we run this course and part of the reason we run this MOOC for free is we think it's a super interesting topic, and we think a lot more people should learn more about it. And we hope that by the end of this course, you will be in the top very, very small percentage of people on the planet who know how Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies work. Okay. If only 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist, less than a Bitcoin per human in the world, would it be okay to think that Bitcoin could be digital gold? Well, yes, 21 million is a lot less than the number of humans in the world. There's somewhere north of 7 billion. And I think I know where this is heading. There's not a lot of Bitcoins and there's a lot of people. And if a lot of people want to buy something that is limited, then its price is going to shoot up and it's going to be like gold and so on and so on and so on. The answer is, I think, like with everything else, the demand side is more important than the supply side. Like, if people have a usage case for Bitcoin, whether that usage case is micropayments or verifying documents or holding uncensorable money or conducting fast international payments or whatever the usage case might turn out to be, and then you combine that with the fact that they're not an unlimited number of Bitcoins, then Bitcoins will accrue value. But just because there are fewer Bitcoins than there are people or millionaires or whatever the statement tends to appear in many different formats. There's fewer Bitcoins than there are millionaires. And so if every millionaire wants a Bitcoin, they're going to go up in value. I don't think that in and of itself is the important part. Because otherwise I can go launch Polemitis coin and there'll only be 1,000 of them. And they'll be even scarcer than Bitcoin. But realistically, I don't think they're going to go accrue that much value. Because why would you use them? Why would you use them and not Bitcoin? So I think a limited supply is important for a private currency to bootstrap. And then beyond that, it's important that it has adoption for some usage case or another if it's going to maintain or grow value. In Switzerland, this question says, there's an alternative currency called WerWr, W-I-R, developed in the 1930s and set up as a mutual credit system which could be settled by barter or national currency. Do you think Bitcoin/cryptos have similar functions? So congratulations to whoever asked this question. WerWr comes up every 2 or 3 MOOCs. It is a suitably obscure piece of currency and monetary history. It's odd. Honestly, I think it's odd. I've tried to think about this in the past because I've been asked this question before. I don't think Bitcoin itself will have a similar role, right? WerWr's point was, I think, if I understand it correctly, to encourage local consumption within their community, right? So that's not the original goal. It was certainly the ongoing goal, right? The original goal, and it was during a relatively unstable period between the world wars that it started. But I think there is this concept there of like, hey, look, we're a close group of people and we're a certain community and we're part of Switzerland. And I don't know if it goes into France at all or if it's just in Switzerland. And so let's all buy from each other and circulate value among ourselves. Well, I don't think that would work with Bitcoin specifically. I think Bitcoin is already quite globalized. And so I don't see that becoming a likely candidate for a local-oriented currency. I also am correct, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think WerWr doesn't take on the unit of account. It uses the franc to be the unit of account, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's another thing that wouldn't work so well, I think, with Bitcoin. Now, I can imagine a specialized cryptocurrency within a community doing something like this, right? Like I could imagine, because we have things like this, right? Like if you go to an amusement park and buy credits, right? That's something you can use within that kind of tight community. And on the other hand, you can get dollars and you can use them anywhere. I suspect cryptocurrencies do give us a technical ability to implement this more easily on something that is bigger than an amusement park, smaller than a country. But it's still hard to get the dynamics right. The network effects of your national unit of account and medium of exchange are hard to top, because once you have it's like gift cards, right? Like gift cards are an interesting concept. Like, right, here's $50 that's just like any other $50, except you can only spend it at Bed Bath and Beyond, right? So the weird concept, and yet gift cards do exist. And I don't think they exist because monetarily they make any sense. I think they exist because people say, well, if I just give you $50, it doesn't even look like I'm trying. But if I get you $50 from Bed Bath and Beyond, I've at least said that generally I want you to have a comforter or a pillow or a vase or something. So I do think it is hard to stimulate or to kickstart a community-based cryptocurrency to serve those same objectives. But it could happen. I mean, technically it could happen. But I worry about the game theory of how you get that started. No major faults were found in Bitcoin's functionality in the last 9 months, so why has there been such a fall in Bitcoin price and overall excitement in the last 9 months? I think this is a slightly unfair approach. I mean, Bitcoin's price today is still much higher than it was in the past. I think the other way one might phrase the question is, why did Bitcoin shoot up so much in December of last year? And now has it come back a little bit more to normal? Right? I don't know. So I don't think the reason it has come down is because something highly negative has been discovered. I think the reason it has come down is that it went up very, very quickly, and probably, well, in retrospect, certainly in an unsustainable manner in December of 2017. And it's trying to find where its kind of longer term prices for the time being. So I wouldn't look for too many deeper thoughts on why it's down from that point. All right, I got to most of these questions. I was kind of keeping an eye on the chat as well. People are correct. I am due for a haircut. Thank you, everyone, for noticing. Needless to say, I saw some Austrian discussion, and the Bitcoin standard was mentioned, and it is a interesting book of the other point of view that hard currency leads to golden eras of economic development, and that is certainly a prevalent view in this space. And Safety Namus, who's a professor down the way in Lebanon, not too far from here, is a big proponent of that point of view. But I think it's also fair to say that's not the general central banking view in 2018. So I think I'm going to wrap up for today. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining the live session. Thank you all for asking good questions. And next week, you will be with Andreas Antonopoulos. He's going to take you into a more technical deep dive for a few weeks. He is more technically oriented than I am. Please get through that and come back afterwards for the kind of more business, finance, innovation aspects to finish up the course. So I will leave you in Andreas's extremely capable hands for a few weeks, and I will see you later in the fall. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great weekend.